slides left in this module. These are not in your not in your materials. You have to. This is Ansof's approach to competitive strategy. Basically, according to Ansof, you have a combination of competitive position and portfolio posture. Portfolio posture is the diversity of your products that you're selling. Okay, and according to him, that will give you competitive advantage, both your position and the number of products that you sell. The competitive position is divided up in strategy components of strategy, capability, and strategic investment. So strategy is growth direction, market position, differentiation. Capability is the organization's expertise and execution on core functions. And investment is organization strategy, capabilities, and facilities. You'll find Ansof in most strategic management programs. I just throw, there's a lot of information on Ansof. I just put a couple of slides in here. It's not covered in your research paper or anything like that, but I just like to keep it in there, just to stay honest. I'm going to go to Module 4. I think that's our biggest one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So we're going to look at strategies in action. So first of all, we're going to look at corporate level strategy and scope. And corporate level strategy is about how and where a company as a whole competes. We mentioned this yesterday, like General Electric. At the corporate level, they decide what products will be developed, what type of products they're going to compete in, and so on and so forth. That's typically a corporate level responsibility. So the scope of a business encompasses everything about that business, such as products and their requirements and features. Scope also defines what is and what is not important to a business so that all resources are devoted to making the business grow and be successful. Influences of corporate level strategy have product scope. So how specialized should the company be in terms of range of products or services? Vertical scope is what vertically linked activities should the company embrace, and we'll see that in a little bit. Geographical scope is what is the optimal geographical spread of company activities. So how far do you want to spread out your organization on a global basis? And that brings us into diversification. So the more diverse products that you manufacture, obviously, or compete in, the more diversified your business. So a company's decision to expand operations by adding new products and services or by adding markets or stages of production to the existing business. The purpose of diversification is to allow a company to enter lines of business that are different from current operations. So, some examples. McDonald's has also, not in every country, but they do operate an organization called McCafe. I think they have that here, as a matter of fact. McCafe. Yeah. And McCafe basically is used to introduce new products. So if it's successful in McCafe, McDonald's may take it on globally as a regular product. General Electric, of course, diversifies into pretty much everything: aircraft engines, medical imaging equipment, generators, nuclear reactors, finance, plastics. I mean, they're into everything. They're an extremely diversified company. Virgin Group, in the UK, they diversify into Virgin Cola, Virgin Airlines, Virgin Megastores, Virgin Telecommunications, and now, of course, they have Virgin Space. Okay. Very diversified organization. There are primarily two types of diversification. You can have related, where companies, you diversify, but you basically have some kind of synergy between your companies, or totally unrelated or conglomerate diversification. So in related or concentric, business expansion is based on a common core of companies' existing resource and capabilities, increases synergy due to an increased value and economy of scale. So as an example, I can show you like Tyco. even though Tyco had a variety of diverse products, they were more concentric or interrelated. As an example, one of their big products was fire sprinkler pipe, which you have, do you have it in here? Yeah, in the ceilings, okay? If you go inside the ceiling, you'll see the fire sprinkler pipe. They then bought, later, a company called Central Sprinkler. Central Sprinkler was the largest manufacturer of sprinkler heads. So they diversified by having sprinklers, and they also had sprinkler pipe, but they are related, okay? Then they bought, of course, then their biggest products were a variety of valves and controls, all of which are basically related. That's concentric diversification, okay? So you're expanding your business, you're buying different products, but those products have some kind of relationship to each other. Whereas if you're looking at General Electric, that would be more of a conglomerate or unrelated. So you improve profitability, lower risk occurs when there is no strategic fit or relationship between the new and old lines of business, similar to a business portfolio. So General Electric, there's no correlation between nuclear, jet engines, plastics, finance, and so on. That is totally an unrelated or conglomerate type of diversification strategy. Does that make sense? So those are two types. And diversification market power, you have predatory pricing, using size and diversity to discipline or drive out specialized competitors in particular product markets. And basically you do that through economy of scale. Bundling is extending a monopoly in one market into a related market by bundling two products together, such as Microsoft bundles Internet Explorer to drive out Netscape. We were just mentioning that before. Reciprocal dealing is leveraging market share across businesses by reciprocal buying agreements. So here, as you diversify, you have reciprocal buying agreements that can basically save you a lot of money and allow you really to compete against other people. Intel refuses to supply Intergraph with microprocessors unless Intergraph licenses technology to Intel. It's reciprocal dealing. If you want this, you have to give us that. Mutual forbearance is establishing a policy among competing conglomerates to stabilize the structure of the competing relationship. The airline industry is the perfect example. Airlines, of course, is an oversaturated market, and most airlines operate as alliance partners because they realize they can stabilize their businesses better by more of a cooperation between competitors. And you won't find any airline that doesn't belong to an airline alliance. They're all in alliances, okay? Because they can serve more markets by using their alliance partners' gates, okay? And that's just basically for mutual survival, okay? So motives or goals for diversification. Why does a company diversify? Obviously growth. It may be necessary for companies experience stagnant or declining industries, so diversification may not always provide increasing profitability, but it is dependent upon existing capabilities and the ability to create value. Risk reduction, you spread the risk across more companies can result in ability to undertake a larger investment risk. If you think of General Electric, we'll look at jet engines. And you can look at medical equipment. And you can look at, I don't know, plastics. Now, by diversifying across a variety of different businesses, what happens if the airline industry takes a hit and the jet engine business goes down, okay? That same year, medical products may actually be up. So the more diversified you are, you're reducing your risk of loss because some businesses may be able to carry other businesses that aren't having a good year. Does that make sense? So the more diversified you are, the more risk reduction you have. And that allows you to take larger investment risks. Profitability, when you're looking at other businesses, is the industry attractive? Is the cost of entry within reason? And is the organization better off with the diversification addition, or are they better off without it? Okay? So that's basically what they look at when they look at profitability when you're diversifying into other products. And frequently, the quickest way, of course, to diversify is to buy. Tyco, as I mentioned yesterday, they went from like a $3 billion corporation to a $15 billion corporation in 5 years. And all of it was through purchase. So they basically expanded by buying other companies. They bought valve companies in their valve division. In their electronics division, they bought all electronic companies, and so on and so forth. So they grew basically through purchase and acquisition.
Dependent upon existing capabilities and the ability to create value, what does it mean?
Yeah, well, you have to look at internally, because they're saying diversification may not always provide increasing profitability. When you're buying other companies, you have to look at the internal capabilities of that company, and can you create value for the new products that you're going to be manufacturing by purchasing another company, okay? So it doesn't always work out, is what they're saying. There's no guarantee. Diversification performance. Now, we looked at economy of scale. Now we're going to look at economy of scope. An economy of scope exists whenever there are cost savings from using a resource in multiple activities carried out in combination rather than independently, and I will explain it in a minute. Economy of scope are cost economies from increasing output across multiple products or divisions. Economies of scale are cost economies from increasing output of a single product. So the example, everybody knows Procter & Gamble?
Yeah, sure.
Big consumer products company. They produce hundreds of products from razors to toothpaste. They can afford to hire an expensive graphic designer and marketing experts as consultants who will use their skills across all of their product lines. So because the costs are spread out, this lowers the average cost of production for each product. So if you had each individual company hire their own graphic designers, the cost would be much greater. So economy of scope allows multiple divisions of a company to make use of one consulting firm or whatever across all of their business units. Okay, does that make sense? And that's what they call economy of scope. It would be the same as if, if a General Electric were to sign an agreement with, let's say, a temporary help firm, so that temporary help firm will supply temporary labor to all of the GE divisions. Okay, that would be economy of scope. You're leveraging a special price across all your business units rather than have each business unit contract separate consulting. Okay. Integration, we kind of were touching on this before. I said we'd get into it. Your vertical integration, you have horizontal integration. Vertical is integration up or down a supply chain through which a company will control the production and distribution of products. So an example, a retailer actually starts to manufacture products it sells, increasing its level of vertical integration. As an example, and the best example is Ford Motor Company. Now for years, Ford was pretty much at the mercy of their suppliers. All of the Ford car radios came from Philco. All of their glass, auto glass, came from LOF, and so on and so on and so forth. They were buying all of these huge inputs for their car manufacturing. And of course, if there was a shortage of glass, or there was a shortage of steel, or there was a shortage of radios, that used to put Ford in a very bad position. So what they started doing, very smartly, was buying their suppliers. Okay? So now when you buy a Ford car, you get Autolite glass. Autolite is actually a Ford company. And the beauty is, so Ford gets priority on all their glass for their automobiles because they own the company. And if there's excess glass manufactured, then Autolite is free to sell to other companies as well. Okay? That makes sense? So that's on the supply side. On the output side, they did the same thing. Originally, Ford was paying for car carriers transport their finished automobiles to dealerships. Big expense. So what did they do? They started buying the car carriers. So over a period of time, Ford really has become totally vertically integrated. So they're up and down the supply chain. They purchased a lot of their suppliers, and they purchased on the output side of their business, car carriers and so on. Okay.
So both are vertical.
Yes, both are vertical integration. Make sense? Supply side and output side, or input side and output side. And that's what we call vertical integration. And we'll see on the next slide, a company can be fully vertically integrated or partially vertically integrated. It just depends how much they've purchased. Now, horizontal integration, much simpler, is simply expansion or addition of business activities at the same level of the value chain. Example, a company may decide to pursue new customers, new products, new geographic locations. Horizontal integration simply means you're buying your competitors. How am I going to grow my business? I'm going to buy my competitors. Okay? So I'm basically buying companies that manufacture similar products to me. Now, that's a good way to grow very quickly. It also allows you to go into an internationalization more quickly because you can buy competitors that are already operating in other countries. The danger is the more horizontal integration you do, if that particular product takes an economic hit, then you're going to suffer across all your businesses. So there's a downside to that. Okay. So types of vertical integration. There is backward, where the company takes over ownership and control of producing its own components or other inputs. As an example, if Kentucky Fried Chicken were to purchase a Dixie Cup company, so all of their paper cups, paper plates, plastic spoons, plastic forks, they would own it. That's called backward integration. It's when you buy it on the supply side. Okay, make sense? Forward integration is when a company takes over ownership and control of activities previously undertaken by its customer. Now, General Motors, as an example, they sell cars to dealerships. Okay? The dealership is basically the customer of General Motors. And then the dealership sells the General Motors car. But what happens is this. If a dealer is not giving good service to their clients, let's say maybe you buy a car, you got problems with it, you bring it back to the dealer, they don't fix it, you bring it back again, they still don't fix it. Who is the consumer going to blame? The dealer? Or exactly, they blame GM. So what GM had done, they went around the country and they acquired 25% of their independent dealerships, particularly the ones that were giving poor service. Okay, that's excuse me, that's an example of forward integration. So you're buying on the output or customer side.
And the Ministry of Defense have major shares in the GM for in America.
Right, give me that again.
The Ministry of Defense of America
Right.
owns major shares in GM.
In GM.
For specifically for the motor for the jet engines.
Oh, I didn't know that.
GE. Look at that.
No, I didn't know that. So full vertical integration occurs when everything the organization produces passes through the vertical integrated business unit. So if you own everything on the supply side, you own everything on the output side, then you are totally integrated. Ford is pretty close now to full vertical integration. I mean, they even own the steel companies they're buying steel from. I think they're going after tire companies. They're almost fully vertically integrated. Most companies, of course, are more partially vertically integrated, where only a portion of the overall production passes through the vertical integrated business unit and the rest through an external market channel. It's not easy to become fully vertically integrated.
But why there is no full horizontal integration?
Well, horizontal integration is simply buying your business rivals. You buy them up. The problem, of course, with that, depending on what country you're in, you can get into antitrust problems because the more competitors you're buying, you're also reaching into a monopolistic scenario. So the government's going to watch very carefully what you're doing in some countries. Other countries, they don't care. But in many countries, they do. So it's not a matter of ever becoming fully horizontally integrated. It's just expanding your business by buying competitive products. And it's a smart way to gain expansion very quickly, or to introduce yourself into more of an international market very quickly. But as I said, there are associated risks with that, because you're not buying diverse products, you're buying fairly the same product. Okay.
Horizontal integration is to purchase or to make acquisition to customers or to rivals.
Yeah, vertical integration is buying on either the input side or the output side of the business.
No, horizontal.
Horizontal integration is typically expanding your business by purchasing competitors.
Customer or competitor?
Typically, it's competitors. It would be competitors. Purchasing customers would be forward integration, forward vertical integration. Horizontal integration is just buying your competitors.
I may get it wrong. A company may decide to purchase new customers, new products, and in new geographic locations. This is for the horizontal integration.
Where was that? Here?
Yes, to the right.
A company may decide to pursue new customers, new products, and new geographic locations. But basically, you're buying either the same or similar products to expand, okay? Some kind of correlation to what you're selling right now. Like Tyco used to buy a variety of different valve companies, high pressure steam valves, check valves. They even bought a company that made fire hydrants, okay? But all of that was basically horizontal integration. They're somewhat related. So horizontal integration is attractive to organizations, of course, wishing to rapidly expand their markets through acquisition. Drawbacks, and we mentioned this already, the organization will have a larger investment in the same market. Therefore, they will be more exposed to risks of that market. So there's dangers in that. In some industries, horizontal integration opportunities may be limited by regulation, such as antitrust laws. And in some industries, the traditional practice, policy, procedures, and cultures of business acquired may be difficult to integrate. So as you buy, this happened to Tyco. They bought so many companies, and they never really took time to integrate the companies under the Tyco family. And they found out that some of the cultures, practice, policy, and procedures of those companies almost made it impossible to integrate them. We used to call it Tycoizing companies. So that you'd buy a company, and then you'd buy another company, another company, another company. You never took the time to really look at the companies you were buying, integrating their benefits, their salary structure, and so on and so forth. And what happened and integrating their IT, their data, and over a period of time, Tyco had a mess. They had all these companies using different IT, all these companies that were had different benefits. Some people in some of the Tyco companies were getting 15 paid holidays a year. Some were getting 11. I mean, it was a total mess because they never really integrated it. Okay. Now, when you're buying companies overseas in certain aspects, even the local culture can be an issue when you're trying to integrate it. Okay. So those are the typical problems with horizontal integration. And then we have the Boston Consultant Group matrix. I kind of like this one. Typically, you think we'll go back and we'll say like General Electric. General Electric reviews all of their different companies probably at least once a year. And what they do is they plug their companies into one of these 4 quadrants. So, if you have a company that has a relatively high growth rate and a relatively high market share, that company would be considered a star. Okay? You want to hold on to that company. A company that has relatively high growth rate but has not really reached a high level of market share at this point would be a question mark. It could be potentially become a star. Okay? Does this make sense? Some companies basically still have a relatively high market share, but really no longer have any relative growth rate. This is what happened with General Electric with their appliance division. They still had a fairly good market share. Their growth rate was pretty flat because of competition from Japan. So what General Electric did, and that's, by the way, that's called a cash cow. And what do you do with a cash cow? What do you do with a cow? You milk it. And that's what they did for a number of years. They milked it because it was generating a lot of revenue, but it was pretty much flatlined as far as potential growth. The trick is, when you have a cash cow and you want to milk it for a while, if you hold on to it too long, and when all of a sudden it starts to lose its market share, then you got a problem. So you have to know how long you can milk it to get the cash out of it before you either sell it or spin it off into an independent company. Okay? Now, typically, if you wait too long and it loses its relative market share and it's already lost its growth rate, then it becomes a dog. I didn't make these terms up, by the way. This is Boston Consulting Group. And once a company is a dog, who's going to buy it? Probably nobody. So your only option when your company slips into a dog category, no market share, no growth rate, what's the only option you have? You can't sell it.
I'm confused about
About what?
the cash cow should be relatively high market share. So,
It's still enjoying.
so the square or the figure of the dog should be exchanged with the cash cow figure to make the
No, because the dog is low growth rate and low market share.
so the low is on the other.
Yeah, the cow has high market share but low growth rate. And just the way you were reading it. No, I understand. It's a little confusing when you're looking at it, but no, it's right. So when a company reaches a point where it's relatively has a flatline market share and a flatline growth rate, it's a dog. And it's probably going to have a very difficult time trying to sell it off. So typically what a company has to do is liquidate it. And then you take a loss. Okay? So and typically your cash cows are what we call mature companies or companies with mature products. Okay? They're no longer gaining, they're no longer growing, but there's still somewhat of a market out there for their product. So you kind of sit back and take advantage of that available cash each year, but you have to know the magic formula as to when to get rid of it, okay? Because you know that's not going to stay forever, that cash coming in, okay? And that's the, what they call the BCG matrix. Make sense? So you got stars, question marks, cash cows, and dogs. Again, I didn't make those terms up. That's real. Merger and acquisitions. A merger is a combination of two companies into a bigger company. Both company stocks typically are surrendered and new company stock is issued in its place. Typically we see mergers, very popular with banks. You see a lot of banking mergers. In fact, my bank in Abu Dhabi just merged not too long ago with National Bank of Abu Dhabi and First Gulf Bank. An acquisition is also known as a takeover or a buyout, is the purchase of one company by another company. So an acquisition may be a friendly acquisition or it can be hostile acquisition. So I gotta go through that. Wait a minute. Guess I don't have it in here. So, we sometimes refer to that as a hostile takeover of a company. And how does that happen? Well, you have a company that's for sale. And another company comes in, makes an offer for your company, but you don't really want to sell to that company because maybe they don't have a good reputation, okay? So you don't sell to them. So they turn down the friendly acquisition and they basically work towards a hostile takeover by buying up 51% of the stock in your company. And once they own 51% of the stock in your company, now they own your company. And that's called a hostile takeover. Okay. Does that make sense?
Excuse me.
Yep.
Here, is it necessary that the boss has to have 50% in the merger acquisition? I mean to say.
No.
Yeah.
No. Typically, in some mergers, typically you'll find a bigger company merging with a smaller company. So the bigger company that merged will probably take on more of a leadership control role. I don't know if that was your question.
We had in our group, but they said you have to come to that level to merge together. They're not allowed. It's 40% and that's 60%. We'll take that. It's kind of position here. It's a gray area, you can say.
Well, I'm trying to think of some companies that have done mergers. I can only think of banks off the top of my head. Oh, Daimler Chrysler, I think was a merger, was it not?
It happened in our group because we are belongs to that.
Yeah.
And then the owner of stakeholder, this is the snare group. They decided recognized that themselves should merge together. It was an instruction to go with
Wait a minute, they stopped the merger?
No, they said you have to be together.
You-
One camera.
You have to be.
Yeah, as a merge. But
Well, who are the companies that merged? Were they both in your group?
yeah.
Oh, well, then they controlled both.
Yeah, but I'm talking about outside.
Yeah.
Different companies.
But typically mergers occur between two independent companies or banks or whatever, where there's certain rules that are drawn up. Okay.
We had a merger in Europe. We had merged with one of our competitors,
Okay.
and they have their own technology. We have our own technology. They have the competitive edge in gravity network piping, and we are in the high pressures. So
Mhm.
the acquisition went into a new
Merger.
yeah, the merger went into a new company,
Right.
and the management is out of it. hiring the CEO and they are hiring the CEO after. Yeah, this is
Not
the.
a complete merge, huh?
It is a complete and I mean, Tita Spain has no longer existence in the market, and Hobos Europe has no existence in the market. Now there is one company called.
So it's a new company, was formed.
Yeah, Amiblu. This is a new company, and the CEO is once hired by them, and once hired by us, and it went that way.
But the CEOs, two different CEOs, from their side and your side.
He has to stay for a period of time, and then.
Yeah.
he
The
has
rest is a-
Yeah, I've seen that happen before in a merger, where they're concerned about the integration of the two companies into one. So they may it's actually like an acting CEO is appointed from both.
Exactly. He's reporting to the board. So
Yeah, but eventually,
And the board itself has in the merge memorandum of understanding, it consists of number of members, and it is identified that three of here, three from here, and then they have to decide.
You don't think it's risky now to have kind of maybe this CEO has his own strategy and that guy is having different strategy? Because at the end, it's human, you know.
He has to apply the company's strategy. It's,
yeah, but both know they're enacting assignments or temporary roles.
sure.
So
They know.
it's not a big risk
Maybe he
factor.
will be granted for another period if the
It's
board
it's
decides.
basically see what they're trying to do is to decrease the pain of the integration by having a CEO on both sides to help with the integration.
He's reporting to the board, and the board is a combination of the two
Yeah.
companies. So he has no final decision. He
Right.
has to go back to the board.
Yeah. I don't think that would be that uncommon. Okay. So, three types of mergers: horizontal, vertical, or concentric. The merger of two companies that are in direct competition in the same industry and have similar products and markets. Oh, I was right. The amalgamation of Daimler-Benz and Chrysler. That would be a horizontal merger. Vertical merger is the merger of a company with its customer, supplier, or distributor. Time Warner, which is a cable company, and Turner Company, which produces CNN, TBS, and other programming. That was a merger. Vertical. Concentric, a merger in which the two companies are in the same general industry but have no mutual buyer, customer, or supplier relationship. Very common in banks, bank and leasing companies. A lot of times banks want to take on leasing as one of their products. So you'll see a bank will merge with a leasing company. That's called concentric. Two types of acquisitions: share acquisition, where the buyer acquires a controlling number of shares and takes control of the target company, and asset acquisition, where a buyer will purchase the assets of the target company. The cash the target receives from the sell-off is paid back to its shareholders. So one is done through shares of stock, and the other is done through purchase of physical assets.
How comes this?
Well, the company who did the asset acquisition maybe wasn't publicly traded.
So if I'm a company and I want to acquisition for another company, I will buy some shares from that company.
Assuming that company is publicly traded and has stock.
Yes.
But if it doesn't, then you would probably do an asset acquisition. You see my point?
How to buy their assets?
Yeah, you buy their assets instead of their stock. I mean, you're accomplishing the same thing, but a company that is not publicly traded wouldn't have stock to buy. So you buy their assets, their physical assets. Does that make sense?
Not that much. If
Well, I mean, not every company is publicly traded and has stock.
yeah, I know this. The share is very clear, but the asset acquisition, how to buy assets for another.
Well, basically, if I want to buy your company, but your company isn't publicly traded and there's no stock, So I go in and I buy your building, I buy your equipment, I buy the land it's sitting on, and so on and so forth. I'm buying all of the assets. And the bonus is I get all your employees with it. That would be an asset acquisition.
It's my,
Okay.
I thought it is the approach of acquisition. So no, this is the acquisition itself.
Yeah, the acquisition itself. So it's got to be one or the other. Turnaround and retrenchment strategies, and this is for companies that are in trouble. A turnaround strategy is the plan and effort to return an underperforming company to acceptable levels of profitability and long-term growth. A well-designed turnaround strategy involves refining strategic objectives, reducing costs, possibly restructuring the organizational process. Retrenchment is typically a corporate level strategy that seeks to reduce the size or diversity of an organization's operation. So if your turnaround strategy doesn't work, then you may have to go into a retrenchment. Retrenchment is not good because that means you're probably going to be closing divisions, laying off employees, and so on and so forth. So typically this involves removing costs, restructuring finances, redefining strategic objectives. And the word restructuring finances in some circles is kind of a politically correct word for bankruptcy. Chapter 7 bankruptcy. They call it reorganization. I mean, General Motors, Chrysler, they've been through Chapter 7 bankruptcy, I don't know, 2-3 times already. Okay, that's a retrenchment strategy. Now, if a retrenchment strategy doesn't work, then you're probably going to be liquidated. So, turnaround is basically changing the strategic objectives in the process. Retrenchment is much more drastic. And after retrenchment, there's probably, you're probably going to be out of business. So, turnaround retrenchment activities, you have restructuring. Company may contract labor, marketing, promotion, or consolidate by closing unprofitable businesses. Divestment is eliminating a portion of your business by selling it off, closing it, or spinning it off into an independent company. Okay, that's divestment. Liquidation, of course, you close the business and you sell off all the assets. Whatever the product was that was being manufactured ceases to exist. And some suppliers going through this will try to tie themselves to a larger company. So they become an exclusive supplier to a giant company. And that can be a good retrenchment activity for a supplier that's in trouble, but long term, it's probably very risky.
Very risky.
Yeah. I mean, that may bail you out for a while, but it's probably not a good long term. Yeah, it's not really a good long term strategy. It's really not. So. Business level strategy, we talked about corporate level, and business level or divisional. And we've seen this already. Just another look. So, you have a broad industry-wide target. You have cost leadership strategy, which is low cost, or product uniqueness, which would be differentiation strategy. A narrow or market segment scope, you would use a focus strategy, low cost, or you could also use focus strategy for differentiation. So a firm positions itself by leveraging its strengths that fall into one of two categories, cost advantage and differentiation. By applying these strengths in either a broad or narrow scope, 3 generic strategies result: cost leadership, differentiation, and focus. It's really the same thing that we looked at before in the Porter. It's just a different model, but it's basically the same thing. Oops. As is this. Porter's generic strategies, cost leadership, and the reason we have this slide in here because it gives examples. Cost leadership, low cost leadership. A low cost strategy is when a company attempts to offer goods or services that are comparable to their competitors but at a lower cost. Examples: Walmart. Everybody familiar with Walmart?
Yeah, I've been
Yeah, they're real cutthroat. Real cutthroat. Acer Computer, IKEA, and Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines is one of the most successful airlines in the United States. And they're employee owned. And they're basically, originally were called a no-frills airline. Because when you can't book a seat, when you book a fare on Southwest Airlines, you go to the gate, and whoever gets to the gate first gets a plastic card with a number 1 on it.
First come, first serve.
First come, first serve. So if you got like 250 on your card, you're probably going to get the worst seat on the airplane. And then when you board the plane, the only thing they give you on a Southwest flight is a bag of peanuts. That's it. And the founder of Southwest Airlines, a guy by the name of Herb Kelleher, he founded it and he was out of Houston, Texas. He wrote a book about Southwest Airlines and he called it Nuts. That was the name of the book. It's a true story. It's a very interesting airline, though, very successful. They have, of all the airlines in the United States, they got the best on-time record. They have the least amount of lost baggage. I mean, they got they're all over the charts. And it's a very simple, no-frills airline. I used to fly them all the time when I was in the States.
What will they will do with your
And they're
luggage?
cheap. Huh?
What they will do with your luggage if you something, not carry on something.
Oh, no, they
I
have,
think this
you,
is-
no, they have luggage. You can go through baggage. But they have the least amount of lost baggage and the best on-time record. At least they did. I don't know how they are now. So differentiation, of course, is uniqueness. The development of a product or service that offers unique attributes valued by customers and perceived to be better or different from the competition. Apple Computer, Rolls-Royce cars, Airstream recreational vehicles, okay? Those are all differentiated products. I mean, Apple is really in a totally different category than the rest of the computers. Rolls-Royce, of course, speaks for itself. An Airstream, I think unless you lived in the United States, you would know an Airstream recreational vehicle. They look like a big silver bullet. They're shaped like a big tube, all silver. And they're really fancy RVs. A Focus, of course, is the narrow segment. Here you concentrate, excuse me, on a narrow segment of the market and attempt to achieve either low cost or differentiation, utilizing a strategy such as customer loyalty, specialization, or market niche. Some examples, I don't think you have any of these here. Whole Foods. Whole Foods is a very big supermarket in the United States. And what is their niche?
I think organic or something.
Yes, very good. In fact, they were just bought by Amazon last year. Yeah, that's their niche. They only sell organic. And they're very expensive.
Yeah, it is in the fancy places they put it there.
Yeah, it's like Scottsdale, Arizona, where I have a house. They have a place there. It's,
Yeah, there's one in Tucson. I've been there.
yeah. Yeah, they only move into
Very
wealthy neighborhoods because those are the only people that can afford all organic. This one is really clever. Build-A-Bear. And I don't expect you to know what that is. Do you know what that is? Do you? Tell me.
When you go to the store, you can design your own bear.
Teddy bear for your kids.
Choose a feature that you like, and they will deliver that to you.
Yeah, I took my granddaughter there when she was little. And you go in, of course, you can buy a teddy bear for what, 20 bucks? Well, Build-A-Bear, it's like $100 or $75. But it's customized. The kid walks in, they pick out the skin they want. They pick out the stuffing they want, the eyes. But the real kicker is they pick out a heart. They go and pick a heart out, and they put the heart inside the bear, okay? And then they sew the whole thing up, and then your kid takes the bear home. So it's kind of a customized, build-your-own teddy bear. Where'd you see that?
I have ordered it from my cousins.
In the States. Yeah, that's a focused, really focused market. Papa Murphy's Pizza. Now, everybody knows You know, how can you diversify, or how can you have a Murphy's Pizza that's going to serve the focused market? The secret is, when you go into Papa Murphy's, you can order your pizza customized, any crust you want, thin crust, thick crust, stuffed crust. You choose from about 30 different toppings, size of the pizza. But the one thing Papa Murphy's doesn't do, they don't cook it. You buy it raw, you put it in a box, you take it home, and you bake it fresh. That's a focused market. So, and it's kind of a brilliant strategy because Papa Murphy's doesn't have to worry about staff, really. They don't have to worry about, you know, tables, chairs, cleanup, and so on and so forth. It's a very clean business. Okay? So those are what we would consider focused markets or segmented markets. Didn't I have, oh no. So business level strategy and cost advantage, economy of scale, cost savings attributed to decreased fixed costs per unit when production and sales increase. Economies of learning, cost savings is attributed to cost reductions as a result of fewer errors and improvement in problem solving by repetition of operations. The idea of economy of learning is the more repetition that your employees have on the job, the better they become at that job with less errors. Okay. Process technology and process design, cost savings are attributed to improved efficiency through innovation of the production process, or what we used to call continuous improvement process. Differentiation and differentiation advantage. Oh, I like this one. Differentiation of product or service is partly determined by its physical characteristics. There are some products you really can't differentiate. Technically simple products. Ever know what a corkscrew is? It's used to open a bottle of wine. So, technically simple products, a corkscrew or a nail, or products that must meet rigorous technical standards, such as a spark plug or a thermometer, actually have fewer differentiation opportunities because of technical or market constraints. Now, if you think about it, if you're in the hardware business and your company makes nails, I mean, they have all different sizes of nails. They have penny nails, they have finished nails, they have roofing nails, and so on. How do you differentiate your nails from your competitor? Duh. You can't. I mean, what do you say? Well, our nails are pointier or our nails are shinier. You really can't. And it's the same thing with a corkscrew. I mean, a corkscrew is just a curved piece of wire to pull a cork out of a bottle. There's not really much differentiation room there. So those are technically simple products. Technically, products that have more technical standards, spark plug or thermometer, really have the same problem. I mean, if you have a spark plug for your car, there really isn't much room for differentiation. Every automaker makes their own spark plugs. So if you have a German car, you buy Bosch. If you have a Ford, you buy Autolite. If you have GM, you buy Delco. If you have a Toyota, you buy Nippon Denso. How do I know all that? Okay. If you have a Chrysler, you buy Mopar. And all of the automakers make spark plugs for their competitors' cars as well. So you can buy Delco spark plugs for a Ford car. Okay? But the problem is, spark plug has to meet very rigid standards in order to fit in your engine so it doesn't damage your cylinder. So there really isn't a lot of room for differentiation with a spark plug. Almost none. Okay? It is what it is. Same thing with thermometers. You know, how can you say, well, our thermometers are much better than our competitors because of X? Thermometers have to meet certain standards to tell the temperature. So there really isn't a lot of room for differentiation. Okay? Make sense? Now, we'll look at simpler products. Products that are technically complex, such as aircraft, or that do not need to conform to particular technical standards, such as toys or toilet paper, offer much greater scope for differentiation. So airplanes, aircraft, you can have a lot of differentiation. Toys, toilet paper. Is there a lot of differentiation with toilet paper? Yeah. Ours is softer, ours is thicker, ours has more paper per roll. You have scented, you can have different colors, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of differentiation because it's a fairly simple, non-technical product. Okay? Everybody got that? Just think toilet paper. Tangible and intangible differentiation factors. Tangible opportunities versus intangible. What's the difference between tangible and intangible? Tangible is something you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it. Intangible, you can't. So a tangible opportunity is an observable characteristic of a product or service relevant to customers' preferences, and companies use these. So, tangible opportunities could be size, shape, color, weight, design, material, technology, reliability, taste, speed, durability, safety. You could be talking about food, you could be talking about cars. Those are tangible opportunities. Intangible opportunities are perceptual benefits that appeal to customers' social, emotional, psychological, and aesthetic considerations. So, we mentioned this yesterday with the Michael Kors purse and the Carrefour purse. Desire for status, exclusivity, individuality, image, security. Those are intangible. They're basically built on perceptions, okay? How people feel about it. Whereas the others are more tangible, you can actually see it. Got it? This stuff goes pretty quick. We'll get into the later chapters. Network strategy. Partnership in the new competitive landscape. So today's companies need to focus on their core competencies and form cooperative relationships with other companies to access and build resources. To benefit from resources external to the organization, it is crucial to establish, develop, and maintain lasting business relationships with customers, suppliers, and other important parties. So you actually form partnerships. And why do we do that? Because companies need to be flexible and cooperative. They can no longer be isolated and independent. We mentioned this yesterday with Apple and Samsung. Fierce competitors, yet Apple shares Samsung touchscreen technology. Interconnection and interdependency helps companies form partnerships to access required resources, develop new capabilities necessary in a rapidly changing business environment. So current theories support the understanding that a company's performance may be strongly influenced by its intercompany ties or its strategic network. So, types of network relationships. There is upstream vertical, downstream vertical, direct horizontal, and indirect horizontal. Upstream vertical are relationships we have with suppliers that provide raw materials, parts, machinery, and services. So if we have exclusive relationships with a supplier, that's considered an upstream vertical relationship. Make sense? Nobody falling asleep yet? Okay, let me try harder. Downstream vertical is a relationship of a company with its buyers that purchase products or services. Oh, my voice is going again. Direct horizontal is a relationship of a company with its competitors in the same industry. So Apple and Samsung actually have a direct horizontal relationship. Indirect horizontal would be relationships of a company with companies outside of its industry. Okay, kind of simplistic, not too difficult.
What is the benefit of that?
Of what?
Indirect.
Well, it would depend.
On the link.
Well, the relationship with a company outside your industry, you may be sharing technology, you may be sharing engineering, and so on. Okay, it's basically relationships and partnerships. is what they're talking about. Strategic alliance are interorganizational cooperative activities to achieve one or more goals linked to the organization's strategic objectives. So the main advantages attributed to alliance creation: entry into new markets. We talked about the airlines. Okay, I mean, years ago, was it Etihad had an alliance with Air Berlin? Why? Because Etihad could not get a gate at Berlin Airport. So by forming an alliance with Air Berlin, they can now access Berlin as an Etihad location, and likewise Air Berlin can now fly and use an Etihad gate in Abu Dhabi. Okay? So entry into new markets. Increase market power and economy of scale and scope. Acquisition and exchange of skills. A lot of alliance companies will actually share some of their technical employees. Strategic renewal, risk and investment sharing, reductions in liabilities of foreignness. So with an alliance, I can actually access foreign locations without having to do direct foreign investment. And direct foreign investment is not really a good strategy because it's very risky and very expensive. Also, the ability to overcome government or trade barriers. So alliance partners can, you know, if you're allied with a partner who's already overcome government trade barriers, you can make use of that. Types of alliances. You have joint venture, equity alliance, and non-equity alliance. So a joint venture, two or more cooperating companies, the parents, create a legally independent company in which they invest from, which they share profits created. Ericsson and Sony Multimedia. And they don't make Sony Ericsson anymore, I don't think. No. That was a joint venture. An equity alliance is where one or more partners assumes a greater ownership interest in either the alliance or another partner. Now, equity means money. Money is money is part of the alliance. Fiat. Everybody knows fiat?
Sure. Italian.
Fiat acquired 35% of Chrysler. Chrysler's always strapped for money. So in exchange, Chrysler can access Fiat technology and facilities in exchange for helping Fiat sell its brands in the United States. Fiat has never been successful selling Fiat cars in the United States until they did that equity alliance with Chrysler. So now,
So in joint venture, they will share the profit.
right.
In equity, they will share the equity, right?
Well, no, equity means money exchanges hands as part of the alliance agreement. So here, Fiat actually bought part of the Chrysler. That's why it's equity. Equity means money. Now, if you go to any Chrysler dealership in the United States, it's no longer called Chrysler, it's Chrysler Fiat. So you have Fiat cars in the showroom of a Chrysler dealership. And Fiat has always had a problem trying to sell cars in the United States. I don't know how good they are, how bad they are, I couldn't tell you. Now, a non-equity alliance, no money exchanges hands. Companies collaborate to supply, produce, market, or distribute products of the partner over an extended period of time, but without substantial ownership investment in the alliance. The example, Dell Computer and Federal Express partner for just-in-time delivery to customers. Now, Dell had a very brilliant marketing strategy. When you want to buy a computer, typically, where do you go to buy it?
Computer shop.
So you might go to Carrefour, maybe Lulu's, Jumbo. You have Jumbo Electronics? No? They have them in Abu Dhabi. Giant. Giant. What's that other one where I bought mine? I can't think of the name of the place. Can't remember. But there's others. The point being, probably 90% or more of people, when they need a computer, they go to one of these. Oh, I know the other one I was thinking of. Plugins. You have plugins? Plugins. That's a big one in the Emirates. So when you need to buy a computer, you go to one of these stores, right? Can you customize the computer you're buying? Well, minor stuff. You know, minor. But basically, you're buying from available stock, right? And 90% or more people, that's where they get their computers. But what happens to the niche market of what we call computer geeks? Everyone knows what a computer geek is? Are they going to be satisfied buying a computer here? No. No. Because they want to design their own. So the computer geek really had nowhere to go. Dell, recognizing that there was definitely a niche or focused market there, came up with a brilliant marketing scheme. You could go on the Dell website, I think you can still do it too, and build your own computer right on the website. It's cool. I went in there once. It's really slick. You go through page after page after page. I mean, you're picking everything from the ground up. But of course, up in the corner is a little digital readout. Keys go spinning up and up and up for everything that you add. This was ideal. So, for the computer geeks. So basically, this build your own computer through our website was almost like a core competency. The problem was you pick your computer, put in your credit card, hit submit, and Dell will build your computer in 5 to 7 work days. It's a winner. The problem was, it took them 3 weeks to deliver it. So, that was their weakness. So, remember we talked about when you have something you don't do well, you outsource it? Well, that's basically what they did, but they went to the best overnight delivery service in the world. No, it's not Aramex. It's Federal Express. And they cut a deal with Federal Express, so that Federal Express got all of Dell Computers' business, guaranteed delivery anywhere in the world in no more than 2 days. Win-win. That was the perfect execution of a non-equity alliance.
2 days. That's happened to me. I customized one computer and they delivered it to the head office within 2 days.
From sitting, where
From
they
them,
do
they are, I don't know, they are in Silicon Valley. I don't know where are they.
Who?
The Dell headquarters. But they will deliver to you inside the US within 2 days. Wherever.
Not US, I'm talking about worldwide.
No.
No,
worldwide.
anywhere in the world in 2 days. Now, there may be some exceptions to the rule. I mean, if you live on some remote island somewhere. But yeah, Federal Express will pretty much deliver anywhere in 2 days. They call it express overnight delivery. So it was a winner. That's the example of the non-equity alliance. I don't think they're using Federal Express, though. I think they use, I think they changed to UPS, if I'm not mistaken. So, there are advantages, of course, and drawbacks to an alliance. Some of the advantages. ease of market entry, shared risk, shared knowledge, expertise, synergy, competitive advantage. Some of the drawbacks, you frequently will have conflict between partners. Sometimes the more deeper you get into the alliance, you may be object to giving access to confidential information about your company. Distribution of earnings, potential loss of autonomy, changing business climate circumstances. And changing business climate circumstances, when you go into an alliance, you have to realize that you always need an exit plan, because the alliance may be good now, but things change. So 3 to 5 years from now, it may no longer serve your purpose. So you need an exit strategy.
So the airlines alliance falls under which category of those? Joint equity or non-equity? For example,
That would be, especially a non-equity alliance.
non-equity.
Yeah, they're not putting money in, but
They are using each other's facilities.
airlines is really a special kind of an alliance too, because they realize that they can't survive alone, because it's an oversaturated market. And if you ever see, every time one airline comes out with something, the other airlines will follow. You know, my prediction was one of the things I fly Etihad. In fact, I just hit 210,000 miles on my Etihad card. And what they did about 6-8 months ago is you used to be able to go online and book your flight, and then you could pick your seat on any connecting flights. Now, you book your flight, and when you go to pick your seat, they charge you. It's like, well, wait a minute. If I'm paying X amount of money for a ticket, why do I have to pay X amount of money more for a seat? I mean, what am I supposed to do? Stand? So it usually will run anywhere. It's usually between $10 and $15 to get your seat in advance. So, and I've seen more and more airlines are following that pattern. Yeah. So they really do stick together on this stuff. Anyway, my prediction, I mean, in the Philippines, it's even worse. You fly like Cebu Pacific, you can't even get a glass of water unless you pay for it. They give you nothing. Everything has a charge. So I'm waiting for. I'm going to go to the comfort room on an airplane one of these days, and there's going to be a coin slot.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for that. It's going to be pay to go.
Is that in your
On planes?
no
Yeah, I know in the street.
public street?
Yeah, like in Paris they have that.
All over Europe.
But yeah, that's going to be the next thing to do with the airlines. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's not much more they can do to insult us. That's going to be the next thing. Pay to go. Can you imagine the poor guy that doesn't have any change? But anyway. Why do alliances fail? Well, there's sometimes culture clash. Common in global alliances where objectives or cultural elements will conflict. Just because you go in an alliance doesn't mean you're going to mesh. Partnering for the wrong reason. Some companies go into an alliance because everybody's doing it. It's like the trend. That's not a good reason. It lacks strategic planning and rationale. Free riding is when you join an alliance and you expect your partners to take on the bulk of work and responsibility, and you contribute nothing. It's kind of like when do you ever do a group project, like a group research paper? That's why when I did my master's program, I got stuck once, and I always refused to do group projects after that. You're free riders. So we had 5 people on a team, and they were in different parts of the country. So we had to meet through the internet, and then when it came time for everybody to turn in their section of the paper, this one young lady in North Carolina, you couldn't find her, couldn't get her on the phone, and the project was due. So I had to volunteer to do my section and her section and then put the whole paper together. But she got the same grade that the rest of us got. That's called free riding. It's the same thing in an alliance. When you have an alliance of companies, you're expected to give and take. It's a sharing process. So you have somebody that all they do is take, then they're considered a free rider. Okay?
You always refer to it as a goodwill.
As goodwill or being a jerk.
It's taken in any roundabout understanding for joint venture. Again, it's the goodwill that we will,
Yeah.
you will do.
Yeah, about the goodwill. Also, another reason alliances fail is because of lack of staff support. You know, just because you form an alliance doesn't mean your employees are going to accept it. So employees may display loyalty to their respective companies rather than to the alliance itself. So if you're going to go into an alliance, you really have to do a communication job with your employees if you want it to be successful. Oh, and that's that. Globalization. So we took everything here. we took corporate, we took business unit, we took network strategy, and now we're going to look at globalization. So, global strategic management. Globalization is the integration of domestic markets and economies into a single worldwide market and the spread of business operations across large numbers of countries. Global businesses are usually large businesses located in many countries or regions and operating with a global outlook. Anybody familiar with the term offshoring? Offshoring is when you transfer specific operations to another country. You still control it. Outsourcing is contracting with a third-party vendor for the supply of product, service, or parts. So when you outsource something, you give up control of it. When you offshore something, you still maintain control. And you don't want to get those two words mixed up. Well, it wouldn't matter, I guess, for your paper. I don't think you might not be using those words. And then we have something called globalization. What? Anybody hear of globalization? Globalization occurs when an organization with a strong global image maintains an equally strong local identity, commonly seen in what we call transnational corporations. So global integration emphasizes consistency of approach, standardization of process, and a common corporate culture across global operations. Decisions are made from a global perspective, so the organization's brand and image are consistent and uniform. The local responsiveness emphasizes adapting to the needs of local markets and allows subsidiaries to develop unique product structures and systems. What they're really talking about here globalization basically is a combination of global and local. And if you think of localization as really a strategy, McDonald's very successfully used globalization. What is McDonald's global product that you can pretty much get everywhere? Well, Big Mac, right? Big Mac, fries, shake. Those are global products. Pretty much everywhere in the world you go to McDonald's, you can buy a Big Mac. But they realized that when they're operating in other countries, they also have to introduce something that will appeal to the local community. So they use a combination of the global product and a local product. What do they do in Middle East countries? Mac Arabia. So that's the local product. These would be the global product. And this is what makes really a global company. Somebody that sells global product but identifies with the local community and sells local products as well. Okay? And they do it very, very smartly. I mean, even if you go to the Philippines, If you go to McDonald's and get a hamburger, you get rice with it. You don't get fries with it. I've never seen anybody eat rice like Filipinos. They eat it for every meal. Rice, rice, rice. Crazy for rice. So that's the localization side of globalization, okay? And many, many companies are using it. I think we might have, I think I have some more examples of it here, maybe. Maybe I don't. You'll see it in like laundry detergent. How about, everybody knows Tide, right? Tide laundry detergent. That's a global product. They sell Tide everywhere. And what's it called in other countries? Tide. But in the Middle East, you'll find brands like Omo, Persil, Ariel, thank you. These are local products, more or less. They're more localized.
It's not for the same company.
I don't know, one of them is, but I don't know which one.
That is also the Tide here, right?
Yeah.
Mercedes is German, though.
Huh?
Mercedes is German.
It's not local.
It's not local. Ariel as well. It's not local.
Yeah, but you don't find them. You don't find them everywhere. Tide you find everywhere. And what they do is, when you get these products, as an example, they have certain scents, smells, that would be appealed to local people. I'm trying to remember the scent. Oud, that's it, yeah. That wouldn't sell too well in the US. The point being, companies have realized that by combining global products with local products, you can be much more successful, a much more successful strategy. Same thing with Pringles, is another one. I mean, anywhere in the world you go, it's Pringles.
Lay's.
Lay's, potato chips? So, organizing global operations, you have product or service. Domestic strategy tends to be driven by mission, values, and objectives. Global strategy can be driven by the orientation towards specific global behaviors selected by the organization. So, product or service, divisions based around specific products or services are formed in countries targeted for such products or service. HP partners with LG to share technology in order to open up Asian market to HP. So it's a cooperative relationship. Regional operations, organizations divide itself into divisions that focus on regions to leverage opportunities, such as Coca-Cola in the EU. Coca-Cola is probably one of the most successful companies in the world. They're unbelievable. And they're everywhere. Customer-based, organizations from separate customer service divisions to meet needs of specific targeted country. Lufthansa Airlines out of Germany does a lot of business in the United States. So what did they do? They have customer service divisions located in the United States. That's where a big chunk of their business is from. So that's organizing global operations for the good of your company. Now, how do you go global? If you're selling dried fruit out of your home in Dammam, and as you're selling your dried fruit, you start to develop customers in the UAE, and maybe in, I don't know, Oman. Are you now a global company or an international company? Yeah. Because you've reached that through export. Selling products or services directly to customers or indirectly through agents, distributors, or trading companies. So through exporting, you can actually become a global or international company. Okay? It's not hard. A friend of mine, worked for me in Phoenix, Arizona. And I was HR director, he was HR manager. And he used to make his own meat marinade, like barbecue sauce. He used to make it at home in his kitchen with his wife. His name was Scott, what was his name? Scott and Mary. And he used to give it out to people at work. And you know what? It was really good. So he started making more of it. And then he started giving it to these specialty stores around the Phoenix area. And it really took off. So then he started expanding it down into Tucson, Arizona. Then he started going to other states with it. And he set up a website. Now he's exporting it all over the world. So he retired from his job. And now he's the owner of Uncle Fuzzy's Meat Marinade. He even has a website. If you don't believe me, you look it up. So he's basically built up this huge international export business simply by making something out of his kitchen. It's kind of and he's surely going to make more money than he'll ever make in human resources. So, licensing and franchising. I thought this felt kind of smooth. I'm writing on the back of the paper. That's okay. Contractual arrangements that give rights to operate under another company's trademark. So, everybody knows what a franchise is, right? So if I'm a franchisor, and I worked with somebody in Abu Dhabi, he used to own 23 Colombiano coffee shops. Guy was Lebanese. And I used to do a lot of HR work for him for free. But he used to let me eat and drink in his coffee houses for free. So it worked out real well for me. Nice guy. His name was Mustafa Fawaz. So he had 23 Colombiano coffee shops between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And he left the UAE, he went to Lebanon, opened another one there. And then he had me come to Lebanon and work with him on he decided he was going to franchise his operation. So he started franchising it, and now he's got Colombiano coffee. I think he's got one in Riyadh, if I'm not mistaken. He's got one in Muscat, and then he went outside the Middle East. He's got one in Southampton, England, Montreal, Canada, and so on and so on and so forth. So he's done all that through franchising. Okay. Anybody ever have a franchise? Now, the problem with franchises, of course, if you're the franchisor, you can make lots of money. If you're the franchisee, you have a lot of risk. Because for every location, and we used to charge, 50? We used to charge $35,000 for every location that you wanted to open. And that's cheap, huh? The Colombiano brand. I just read the other day, everybody familiar with Jollibee Chicken? They're headquartered in the Philippines. They have 1,000 stores in the Philippines. And now they're expanding. They're already going global, but now they're targeting the United States market. Somewhere else, too. United States and another market. I was stunned. One franchise in Jollibee was like $1 million. So the franchisee here is only paying $35,000, but you also pay a 7% of your monthly sales as a franchise fee. So, and that's sales. That's not profit. So even if you lose money, you still have to pay the franchisor 7%. So a lot of risk here, but not so much risk here. And it's a very good way to go global fairly quickly if you have a unique type of franchise idea. Okay. The other one, of course, is licensing. And this is what Coca-Cola uses so effectively. Because with licensing, there's virtually no risk. And when you have a product like Coca-Cola, I mean, the original Coca-Cola was made in like 1880 something, 1883. I mean, it's an extremely old product, but it's one of the most successful companies in the world. And they have bottling companies lining up for the rights to make, sell, and distribute Coca-Cola. So any Coca-Cola that you buy even here is made by a bottling company in Saudi. I don't know what city. In the UAE, it's bottled in Al Ain, and Al Ain Bottling Company. So the bottling company pays a licensing fee back to Coca-Cola for the right to make and distribute their product. And the kicker is they have to buy all their syrup from Coca-Cola as well.
I think here with PepsiCo they do the same, but for the Coca-Cola they open as a Coca-Cola here. But PepsiCo they have given the license to other Jumea and
Nina beverage in Jordan.
Oh, I'm sure PepsiCo does the exact same thing. But PepsiCo is a different kind of arrangement. PepsiCo is because, yeah, I know, but but besides Pepsi, they also
Yeah,
own
they have,
Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. That's a big,
here
conglomerate.
They have Pringles and they have Lay's chips.
yeah. But the point is, licensing is also another way to go global with really very little risk. Joint venture, of course, we already talked about. Partnering a project with an existing overseas business to gain entry into a foreign market. And foreign direct investment, I mentioned this before. This probably is the most expensive and carries the most risk. So if you want to establish a company's own facility with direct supervision in a foreign country, high cost and risk of overseas subsidiary. So that means you go into a country, you have to get all the permits you need, you have to buy the land, build the building, hire staff, get all your equipment. Foreign direct investment has a lot of risk. I mean, all the oil companies in the United States that built the Venezuelan infrastructure and then they got booted out, lost a bundle down there because of the foreign direct investment. Okay? So those are the 4 different ways of going global. Okay? Everybody got it? We're getting close to prayer time. I think I can get this finished by then. So, benefits of global strategy. You increase the range of competitive options available. So you use global resources to gain competitive advantage in individual national markets. Customer preference. Increased customer base when you go global results in more diversification of products and more growth. Scale economies. World market production can achieve large-scale economies in product development, operations, and marketing. Cost benefits. The biggest cost benefits result from replication of knowledge. So once you build a business in one country, then you replicate that business in another country, because if one is running well, you just copy it everywhere you go. Replication, they call it replication of knowledge. It's a big cost benefit. Also, you can exploit national resource efficiencies. So leveraging regional resource and knowledge opportunities, it's called comparative advantage, and we're going to see that in another slide in a few minutes. Serving global customers. The primary driver of globalization, obviously, is increasing your customer base. And achieve global level knowledge of an industry. So learning occurs more rapidly when operating in different country environments. So those are all the benefits to a global strategy. Comparative advantage is the advantage gained by production of a product or service in one region over another due to leveraging the availability of local external elements. Comparative advantage concerns nations, not industries. So comparative advantage is an advantage utilized by a business operating in a country where its products make intensive use of valuable resources readily available in that country. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll give the example, Will. So, leveraging local technology, human skills, management capability, capital markets, communication facilities, transportation, or natural resources. So, any of these or some of these may be located in a particular country. So you move your business to that country to take advantage of those natural resources, okay, that will help your business. The example, everybody knows Saudi Arabia, right? Okay. Saudi Arabia and China both produce diesel oil. Saudi Arabia has an advantage of having easy access to oil, whereas China needs to import its oil from the Middle East for diesel production. So of the two countries, clearly Saudi Arabia has a comparative advantage over China because the resource is right here, okay? That's comparative advantage. Make sense now?
You mean China take crude oil to produce diesel oil?
Yeah. So they have to buy the oil
China also
from the Middle East, convert it to diesel, and then sell it.
but China also have wells and production.
No.
No?
No, China does not have good oil access. It's probably their weakest point is the fact that they have to import their oil.
Any oil well or none?
I don't think they have any. They have to import all their oil. It's their Achilles heel, as a matter of fact.
Saudi Arabia and China produce diesel oil.
Yeah,
They are both producing.
yeah,
So why China needs to import them?
because they have to import the raw oil, and then convert it to diesel, and then sell it. Whereas in Saudi, you just pump it out of the ground and convert it right here. So Saudi has the comparative advantage because of the natural resource being here. It's just like if I was going to go into the diamond business, well, I might open my manufacturing operation in South Africa where the diamonds are. Okay? That would be comparative advantage. Okay? Huh? Cement, yeah. Yeah, cement is a good example. Because Cemex, a Mexican cement company, does that all over the world. In fact, they have a big plant in San Fernando, Cebu, in the Philippines. Yep, that's comparative advantage. Global business structures, you have multi-domestic, multinational, global, and transnational. So the multi-domestic is an organization, clones itself, sets up replicas in different countries. Example, Philips locates a medical electronics in the US and then builds the same type of facility in Japan. That's replication of knowledge. Multinational is a corporation with extensive ties in international operations in more than one foreign country. General Electric, Exxon, Walmart, Mitsubishi, Daimler, Chrysler, etc. Global companies, of course, global integration and national differentiation. They set up a global network of activities. So that's where they're selling a global product as well as a localized product. Procter & Gamble adopts global standardization, Pringles and perfumes, and national differentiation for other products such as hair coloring and laundry detergents, which are more localized. Okay? And transnational, I think I mentioned this yesterday, transnationals. That's where a multinational operates worldwide without being identified with a national home base. Remember I talked about that yesterday? Yeah. It is said to operate on a borderless basis. So the example here is Nestle, who never advertises what country their headquarters is in. And Unilever is another one. They are transnational. They want to be considered a borderless company, okay?
What is the difference between multi-domestic and multinational?
The multi-domestic basically sets up replications of itself in other countries, whereas multinational may have totally different operations. In other words, diversification in different countries. But typically multi-domestic are the same products or services in different countries. Does that make sense? Global view of Porter's competitive model. The only difference here, when you go global, the overlay, the intensity of rivalry among established firms increases because there's more producers entering the market, there's an increase in competitive diversity, and an increase in excess capacity. Do we know what excess capacity is? It's a manufacturing term.
Capacity within your facility that you does not being utilized in terms of demand.
Yeah, in other words, if I have X amount of machines and X amount of employees, and I'm running those machines 7 days a week on 3 shifts, then I am working at capacity. If I have additional machines idle and additional employees that I can put on them, then I have excess capacity. Okay, yeah. Huh? Utilization. Yeah. So, risk of entry of potential competitors, barriers to entry will decrease substantially when you go global. The power of buyers increases due to large customers' ability to leverage more buying power effectively. Threat of substitute products, greater market power since global organizations can diversify and develop substitutes more readily, so substitutes increase, and the bargaining power of suppliers is usually, unfortunately, reduced when you go global because there are more suppliers available to pick from. So they lose. Suppliers always lose. Almost done. Creating global strategy success, maintaining flexibility and limit risk, reducing levels of hierarchy. And I said when you go like multinational or global, you have to decentralize and reduce hierarchy. Encourage innovation, adapt standard procedures, be cautious of size and exposure. You have to push more communications and public relations. Management of international supply chains becomes critical. These companies will probably do more outsourcing, become more diversified, and they watch for basically the scope or breadth of their business and the different resources that they need. And I think that's it.